The Devlawi is hot in the UK today. We're looking at Ross Coulthart, another basic segment on News Nation where he answers questions from the general public. Let's get into it.
Well, g'day and welcome back to Reality Check Q&A, where you get to ask me the hard questions.
G'day, Ross.
With our first question, we had a lot of viewer emails and comments on this from our last video, so we'll just start there. People want to know what you think about whistleblower Matthew Brown's recent tweet to Elon Musk. Now, the tweet is very long, so I will just read the top portion of it. Hey,
Matthew Brown, by the way, is the author of the Immaculate Constellation documents. I'll see if I can put a link in the corner. Never done that. I did a segment on Matthew Brown with, I think it was George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell.
Elon Musk interested in a real asymmetric advantage to wield in this political adventure you have started. As you now know, the White House has long possessed a unique AI capable of accurately predicting a range of future events. Talk about some stiff opposition.
I mean, it's a hell of a claim.
Yeah, that is a massive claim. The way he says, as you know, the White House is in possession of an AI that can predict the future. Matthew Brown, I need to do another segment. He came out, he did the interview. Go and watch it. He looked terrified. Didn't look like he wanted to come out and say the things that he was saying about reprisals from the US government, potential death threats, things like that. Ever since he's been on Reddit and he's been on various platforms talking very woo. I don't know what to make of it.
And I've seen absolutely no evidence of that, I have to say.
All right, next let's go to Scott.
By the way, Ross spent about another 10 minutes answering that question. I just cut it because he basically answered the question and then went on to other AI things that the government are using. That was nothing to do with the original question.
He has a question about whistleblowers. Ross, the term whistleblower is thrown around a lot. In your opinion, if someone is told by the Pentagon what they can and cannot say, and they have not seen anything with their own eyes, can they really be a whistleblower?
They really love the long form questions, these guys.
I feel they are PSYOP. Also, in my humble opinion, I feel that Bob Lazar is the only true whistleblower. What do you think?
Bob Lazar splits a lot of opinion. What do you think? Me personally, I think he's stuck to his story. I don't think there's been many deviations over the years. I think he's been pretty consistent with it. The one thing that I will say is he always came out and said, I don't want to be in the limelight and I don't want to make money off the topic. Whilst recently, he's been in the limelight and he's making a lot of money off the topic.
Thanks in advance, Scott.
I actually think I disagree. You can be a whistleblower and be a patriot who doesn't want to compromise national security sensitive issues. Somebody like, for example, David Grush might reveal that he's aware of a decades-long reverse engineering alien tech retrieval program. And so, yes, I do think it's possible to be a whistleblower.
Although David Grush wouldn't call it alien tech, he would say non-human intelligence, because I think there seems to be this drive at the moment towards, yes, there is something to the phenomenon, but maybe it's interdimensional. And recently, worryingly, a lot of people seem to be moving towards the spiritual. Like, are they demonic?
Somebody who is coming forward and revealing things that the government doesn't know, whilst at the same time making sure that you don't compromise things that you think are importantly national security sensitive that would be of benefit to foreign adversaries if they were revealed.
All right, thank you, Russ. We had a lot of questions about the age of disclosure. Here's a question from Debbie. G'day, Russ and Megan. Thank you for your professional and informative show. Why isn't the age of disclosure aired yet on a major streaming service?
I think a lot of people are pinging the hopes on age of disclosure, and I don't know if you guys have ever heard the podcast or watched the YouTube videos of that UFO podcast. Great show, great guys who present it. But I think they went into a bit of detail from people who actually had the screening of Age of Disclosure, and a lot of people were less than impressed. it seemed like it was another one of those that was geared up to be this. We're going to include loads of classified footage. We're going to blow the lid off the topic, and it seems to be it's just a lot of people talking again, like more talking head after more talking head, and it's probably not going to be quite what everyone thinks it's going to be.
Any thoughts on whether the military complex, military intelligence, and the deep state are working behind the scenes to make sure this movie doesn't get a wide public viewing?
I can't imagine that, to be honest. I mean, I can imagine that they've watched it and gone, it's just more people talking. They're not saying anything that anyone's not heard before, to be honest.
It seems highly suspicious that the public only sees the brief trailer on this important documentary. Thanks, Debbie.
I haven't seen it. I've had very detailed accounts of it from friends of mine who were there at the Austin premiere. I think it was at South by Southwest, and it really blew people's socks off. And
Come on, Ross did it. I think Ross was one of the people who said, yeah, it's basically going to blow the lid off everything, and I think he's doubling down on it now.
In Austin. Unfortunately, months and months and months have gone by, and it hasn't made it into the cinemas, and it hasn't made it yet onto a streamer.
I don't think something like this would make it to a cinema. People are not going watching the latest Marvel flick at the pictures anymore. Pictures, that's how old I am. People are not going to the cinema anymore to watch like the mainstream movies. Everything's tanking. You know, everything's being called a flop now. So, would the general public go and watch a 2-hour documentary about UFOs at the cinema? I don't think so. I don't think it's the right place for it anyway.
The two executive producers are Dan Farrer, who is a well-known California-based producer, and Lou Elizondo. And I know Lou's had some difficulties over the time, and
Been showing pictures of chandeliers and saying that they're UFOs.
These are now resolved. But the issue is whether Mr. Farrer is going to be able to negotiate what is probably more likely a streaming agreement.
Yeah, it makes sense that it goes on somewhere like Netflix or Amazon Prime.
With, say, a Netflix, an HBO, a Discovery, or a Nat Geo.
All right, we'll go to Tim. Tim tweeted me. He was asking about video images of UAP we see in the sky, specifically the hologram of a pyramid seen over the Pentagon several years ago, if you remember that. He said, is it known that the U.S. has satellites that can holographic project from space, and the Russians have the capability of a light or laser from space reflected off a mirror as demonstrated in Eastern Europe several years back? Can these be the images we see?
I think I remember the triangular UFO. I think it was over Moscow as well. I wouldn't say it's a hologram though, because I think if it just looked a little bit janky, as in not a solid object, I wouldn't make that leap towards basically a hologram.
That's a good question, actually. I don't know anything about alleged satellite-based holographic technology. I don't think there is any such technology that I'm aware of that's based on satellites.
All right, Ross.
Again, you'll have to go and watch the full segment. Ross does tend to say, I don't know anything about that, then we'll spend the next 5 minutes talking about something similar or related. But I'd just like, for you guys, I'd just cut it to the facts.
Yes, thank you. We have our next question coming from viewer SN. I am so thankful for insights and information. You're right. Just when you think you have a grip on it, everything flips upside down. Watching your latest episode, vetting Jake Barber at Contact in the Desert, and I have a horrible question about the psionics abductions. What happens when they fail to pick up these abilities? It's doubtful after being tortured, children, they are just sent back home. The secret doesn't allow for volunteers. Imagine the world we could have.
For those who don't know who Jake Barber is, I'll insert a segment now.
Hey Ross. My name is Jacob Barber, and for the last 30 years I've worked for the U.S. government and its private partners in both an official capacity as an enlisted man in the United States Air Force and in an unofficial capacity for the broader intelligence community as a contractor. Over the last 3 decades, my work has been very diverse and has included the recovery of downed UAP of non-human origin.
Oh, well, let's start with what you finished with. Imagine the world that we could have. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I find it very
Imagine all the people.
depressing. I'm increasingly convinced that the United States and other countries are sitting on strong evidence of breakthrough technologies, not just propulsion systems, but also energy systems that could revolutionize how we use energy on this planet. And yes, it is very depressing, but it's also very depressing how these young people, particularly prepubescent kids who apparently have very plastic brains that are
Don't know what he means by that.
malleable and capable of being trained for the purposes of psionics.
Suppose he's talking about elasticity in the brain. I think that's a thing.
There have been a number of children, I've spoken to some of them as adults, who've gone through what has been described to me as an absolutely terrifying program where, yes, multiple such children independently as adults verify to me that they were put under what you can only describe as torture, electric
I did not know anything about this. I need to look into it.
shocks, rectal probes placed up their bottoms in order to induce a hemispheric synchronization of the brain. I can't believe that in this day and age such things have been going on.
I would not put anything past any government, to be honest. I mean, go and watch the Wi-Fi segment on the Montauk project. And I think there was a couple of segments around it. Hard watching.
And yes, I'm still in the process of investigating it. But yes, they have let these kids go, because if you think about it, if a kid goes home to mum and dad and says, "Oh, mum and dad, that special school you sent me to, I was being tortured by men in white jackets," what are mum and dad going to do? They're going to be very, very skeptical. And
I'd be kicking the door in. I'd be going in, Rambo-ing the bastard, as Casper Sight would say.
it's just like child abuse. It's just like when children say they've been victims of horrible sexual abuse. Sadly, all too often, they don't get believed. And believe me, we are aggressively investigating this like a dog on a bone. It's not going to go away. We know the names of some of the scientists and people involved. We know the names of the corporations, and we know the agencies involved. I'm very slowly working on this, and if anyone has any further information, you are very welcome to get in touch with me.
I mean, yeah, it's just one of those things. I mean, every time they say we've got the names and we've got the places and we've got the people and things like that, it's how often do we hear it and nothing really comes of it? I really hope it's the fact that they are investigating and there's going to be somebody held accountable. If it's a government-led project, don't think anyone will.
All right, thank you, Russ. Our next question. Hi, Russ. Do you think that when space tourism eventually gets rolled out to more people, we will start getting reports and videos of strange sightings from passengers? Or do you think that the prospect of this scenario will prompt governments to try to restrict the industry? Regards, Anthony.
Yes,
That'd be brilliant. Imagine just take a little trip up there and all of a sudden UFO outside the window. Captain, nothing to see here.
I agree with you. It's only a matter of time as space tourism opens up before people will start seeing the very kind of anomalous phenomena that some astronauts have been reporting for years. I refer people, for example, to the claims made by astronaut Corey or Story Musgrave. I'm really intrigued by what he's described. He described almost lifelike, almost like organic creatures outside the spacecraft that appeared to be like snakes hovering in orbit outside of the spacecraft.
Twice I saw what I call my eel, which I don't know the size of it because I don't know how far away it was, but it was like a rubber piece of hose which had internal motions in it. Maybe it's 8 feet, maybe it's 10, I'm not sure. When you can't tell how far away, you can't get the size, so I'm missing both of those things, size and how far away. But there's no question it had internal motion.
I've got a massive fear of snakes, so if I saw one of them in space, I'm opening the airlock and just ending it there and then.
These reports have been made and they will be made, and I think that's why there's a time scale, I think a time limit on how long this secret can be kept, because not just in orbit, the NHI, whatever they are, they're making themselves far more overt. I think there's a show going on, and I think they're very slowly turning up the heat on countries like the US, Russia, and China that have been suppressing this secret for so long. They want you to know about them.
Surely it's just easy then. Just turn up. Independence Day style. Like, here we are. Deny us.
All right, we will go to Christian in Texas. Hi, Ross and Megan. Thank you for your excellent work diving into topics
Size of that question. Jesus.
that the public wants and needs to know. Ross, when one begins looking into the history of global UFO UAP sightings, one invariably comes across the controversial Billy Meier case. I have never heard your assessment of this, and if you have a take on its authenticity. Phil Schneider, whom you spoke about in the last Q&A, has mentioned that CIA are aware that some contacts were real.
I'm sure the CIA got the fingerprints all over it, but Billy Meier, I'll think about that one.
Astronaut Gordon Cooper describes Meier's photographs as, quote, absolutely authentic, and that efforts have been made to make them look fake. There have been some smart voices on the subject who seem to be dismissive of this case. What is your opinion?
Yeah, I think I do remember Billy Meier. I'll see if I can dig out the photos.
It's almost impossible to know, frankly. I mean, the Billy Meier photographs, you can just Google Billy Meier, Myer, and they are extraordinarily clear, high-resolution images. I think they were in Switzerland from memory, of him taking these extraordinary images of what look like metallic hat-shaped discs that are hovering over what looks like a beautiful Swiss countryside. Is it Meier? I think I've forgotten the pronunciation.
Yeah, Meier.
Meier. But they're extraordinary images. And frankly, I don't know.
Yeah, I think I saw some of them and some videos. And yeah, I think he said there was like a beautiful alien woman who came out of one of the ships. But all the pictures show that they're hovering. Yeah, he said they kept landing and they kept showing up and basically had a relationship with them all and never showed a picture of the landed.
Really don't know anything about them. If there's anybody that can substantiate them for me, I'd love to hear it.
Okay, thank you, Russ. And we will go to our next question. This comes from Mike. Hi, Russ and Megan. I appreciate all your hard work that you have been doing. Until 3 years ago, I lived in Cambowarra, New South Wales, Australia, and now retired to Thailand. I was watching your latest report on Reality Check regarding the Wall Street Journal article. My question, have you heard or been given information from your sources regarding secret experimental government anti-gravity disc-shaped vehicles in southern
God, take a breath.
Germany? This is the USAF based in Ramstein, or any other parts of the world, Michael?
I think she has butchered a few words on that, but fair play to her, because what maniacs type in these questions?
I certainly am aware of United States experiments involving anti-gravity. I do believe that the United States has probably cracked anti-gravity. I'm not aware of any specific experiments at Ramstein, which is a huge Air Force base that I've actually been to in Germany. I am aware of in different parts of the world, the US being involved in attempting to replicate anti-gravity technology. And this goes right back to Thomas Townsend Brown, who my good friend and colleague Jesse Michaels has done an extraordinarily good video about. I commend it to you. Go to American Alchemy, put in Thomas Townsend Brown, and there's a great documentary that Jesse's done about this.
Do you remember the United States Air Force, where it had a disc, basically, and there was a guy sat in a UFO, and it was basically a hovercraft. God, that was less than convincing.
Canadian scientists and engineers were pioneers in the field of vertical takeoff and landing aircraft. Their contributions would pave the way for future projects and excite the imaginations of millions.
I always thought, was that not an attempt to say UFOs are actually US Air Force projects? aircraft, or look at us and we're absolutely ridiculous and it's definitely not us. I don't know what the meaning behind that thing was.
It's quite obvious that the United States has been working on anti-gravity right through the 50s, the 60s, and then it all went dark. And the reason it went dark, I think, is because they had a breakthrough and it was all buried.
All right, we will go to a question from viewer Carl. He sent us an email saying, "Hi, team. Thanks for your great work on this topic. Can you please give your opinion on the ongoing developments on the Nazca mummies in Peru? I have not heard you speak on this topic. There does appear to be some legitimate research being done on these corpses, including the work of American forensic odontologist Dr. John McDowell."
Yeah, the Nazca, the Peru mummies. What's your thoughts? Me, not convinced.
Regards, Carl.
I've had preliminary chats with Dr. John McDowell myself, and I know he's convinced, based on his dental assessments, that these are some potential new hominid that is not human-based, not Homo sapiens. I'm also in touch with people in Mexico who've been involved in doing the research, and I'm also in touch with people in Peru. Suffice to say, you will be hearing more from me on this very shortly.
Peruvian scientists have confirmed supposed alien mummies are in fact dolls made from bones. The dolls were originally seized in the capital Lima in October last year. Scientists say there is no truth to the theory aliens helped build ancient Incan landmarks like Machu Picchu, calling the ideas fairy tales.
Hi, I'm a big fan of your channel and regularly listen to podcasts and discussions around NHIs and consciousness.
The woo. I knew we'd get here eventually.
What's your take on crop circles? I used to assume they were all man-made, just board and rope, but some seem more complex. In a few cases, the stalks appear woven rather than flattened, and nodes or joints seem elongated where the bending happens. Have you come across anything interesting about this phenomenon?
I think some of the crop circles back in the day were definitely genuinely made by some unknown force. I do think that. The CIA apparently investigated UFOs quite heavily. The Y-Files covered that. I'll see if I can put a link in the description if I remember. But quite a lot of them are definitely man-made, and I think as time went on, technology went on, night vision, the ability to use drones and things like that to see what you were doing. I think a lot of the modern crop circles are definitely just man-made.
I've been waiting for somebody to ask me this question because I actually have some knowledge about this. I was on a TV show in Australia that interviewed the two English gentlemen who claimed to have been responsible for all of the crop circles. And they were literally two blokes with a long wooden plank and a couple of ropes. And they claimed that they had manufactured a lot of the crop circles in and around Wiltshire.
I saw that segment. God, it was just basically, just going around in circles with a plank of wood. Theoretically, what they were doing was actually creating a crop circle. But when you look at the really intrinsic ones that look like they're laser cut, and the way that the stalks bend, they're almost like sort of cracked from the inside. They don't crack. I don't know, but I think Ross's skepticism on their claim that they've created all the crop circles is right. I think they're talking bollocks.
And it went huge in the British media at the time, and we in Australia loved quirky stories like this for our Australian TV show, and so we interviewed these blokes. And frankly, I think they're a couple of bull. I don't believe them for a moment. I think that there are real crop circles. I think there is a manifestation that has been happening for probably hundreds, if not thousands of years in fields, not just around the UK. It also happens here in Australia. And there are aspects to crop circles that I do find intriguing.
I agree. And if you want to know anything about crop circles, there's only one man to talk to.
Right? But that is incredible. That's no plane, mate. Oh. The shadow was in fact a plane.
More. Hello, Ross. I have a question about UFO, UAP, NHI that might or might not be anything, but would like to know if there might be any correlation between leaking information or disclosure and world events that cause distraction from the topic of UFO, UAP, NHI. Has anyone looked into this? And if so, how can more light be shed on this to make this stand out as to what is or has distracted from leaking or disclosure of this kind of information? If this has happened before and there is a pattern, then what events happened at these times to distract everyone from this? This is from Gerald in New York.
Yeah, I'm sure there has been. You know, back in the day, like where they say, "Oh, a train's derailed and there's been chemical spills on it, and you can't go anywhere near the area," or basically a fighter jet went down in a jungle or something, and basically they've got to go and recover it. I say basically a lot, don't I? But I can imagine that there are covers for things like that, or foreign tech, where foreign tech has actually crashed like a spy plane from Russia or China, and they don't want anyone in there, but they don't want anyone to know that they're going retrieving it either, so they make a cover story of maybe it's a light aircraft that was crashed in the mountains, or something like that.
Look, it's a good question. I am aware of retrievals where, yes, there have been manufactured news events to try and disguise the circumstances of a retrieval. Normally it's a plane crash or it's a top secret craft crash that they've tried to hide.
But it also could be dairy products, right?
But I'm not really aware of sort of major news events like wars or anything like that being used to distract the public from a UAP event. I guess I'd need more detail on what you're referring to.
Yeah, but do you remember the 3 or 4 UFOs that were shot? Oh, I say UFOs, but they were objects, and they called them objects. The Pentagon called them objects. Do you remember when they got shot down? I think there was Chinese spy balloon, but then there was 2 others, and they called them objects. And then it went really quiet, like, oh, we can't retrieve them. And there was one that was shot down in Alaska. I'll see if I can put the news segment now.
So I can confirm that the Department of Defense was tracking a high-altitude object over Alaska airspace in the last 24 hours. The object was flying at an altitude of 40,000 feet and posed a reasonable threat to the safety of civilian flight. Fighter aircraft assigned to U.S. Northern Command took down the object within the last hour.
Okay. So good questions there. I think Ross does a good job at basically just cutting to it and saying whether he knows something or he doesn't know something. I trimmed this segment down quite a lot because he'll say things like, I don't know, or I've not seen any evidence of that, and then he'll go into a 5-minute tirade about something else. So I cut it down quite a bit, but go and watch the full thing. As always, he's a very informative man. He's very well spoken, and I look forward to seeing what he's got to discuss next. You take care. I'll see you on the next one.